The international arrivals terminal at O'Hare was a blur of exhausted travelers and eager greeters when I finally emerged through the sliding doors. 36 hours of travel from rural Tanzania had left me disoriented, my body clock thoroughly confused after 2 weeks volunteering at a medical clinic halfway around the world. All I wanted was a shower, my own bed, and the comfort of my husband Ryan's arms around me. I spotted Melissa first, her bright red hair like a beacon among the crowd. My best friend since our freshman year of college, she had texted earlier offering to pick me up since Ryan was stuck in meetings. I'd been disappointed but understood. His investment banking job often kept him tethered to the office at unpredictable hours. "Emma!" Melissa called, waving frantically. Her smile seemed strained, but I attributed it to the chaos of the terminal. As I dragged my luggage toward her, I scanned the crowd instinctively, still half hoping to see Ryan's tall frame towering over the masses. "He's not here," Melissa said as I approached, answering my unspoken question. "Just me, I'm afraid." "Thanks for coming," I replied, dropping my bags to accept her hug. "I know it's a long drive from Evanston." Melissa embraced me tightly, her familiar perfume a comforting reminder of home. But as we stood there among the reunions happening all around us, something changed. Her body tensed, and she held me longer than usual. Then she turned her head slightly, her lips nearly touching my ear. "Ryan's been sleeping with Jessica from his office," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the terminal noise. "They've been together at your house. I saw his car at her apartment 3 times. I'm so sorry, Em." The words didn't register at first, like they were spoken in a language I couldn't quite translate. Jessica Parker, Ryan's ambitious new colleague, 30-something, never married, with the kind of effortless beauty that made even confident women feel slightly inadequate. Melissa pulled back, her eyes glistening with unshed tears as she searched my face. Around us, life continued its normal rhythms, families reuniting, travelers collecting baggage, airport announcements echoing overhead. But in that moment, everything had stopped for me, the ground shifting beneath my feet like the aftershocks of an earthquake. "What?" I managed, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "Melissa, what are you saying?" But I knew exactly what she was saying. And somewhere beneath the shock and confusion, I knew it was true. The drive from O'Hare to our home in Lincoln Park passed in a surreal haze. Melissa attempted small talk about my trip, asking about the clinic and the children I'd treated, but my responses were mechanical, my mind replaying her whispered words on endless loop. "How do you know?" I finally asked as we merged onto the Kennedy Expressway, the Chicago skyline materializing through the windshield. "About Ryan and Jessica." Melissa's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I didn't want to be the one to tell you," she said, eyes fixed on the road. "Especially not like this, right when you got back. But I couldn't let you walk into that house without knowing." "How long?" I pressed, needing concrete details, something solid to grasp amid the quicksand of betrayal opening beneath me. "A week after you left for Tanzania, I stopped by your place to water the plants like you asked. Ryan's car was there, but so was another car I didn't recognize. I thought maybe it was a work colleague. You know, with him working from home more often." She paused, signaling for a lane change. "Then last weekend, I was meeting Allie for dinner in River North, and I saw them together at Sienna Tavern. They weren't just having a professional dinner, Emma. They were intimate, holding hands across the table, kissing. Each word landed like a physical blow. Ryan and I had eaten at Sienna Tavern for our anniversary last year. It was our special place. Then yesterday," Melissa continued reluctantly, "I drove past Jessica's apartment building. You know where she lives?" I interrupted. "Ryan mentioned it at your Christmas party, remember? When he was talking about the company helping her relocate from New York? It's that luxury high-rise in Streeterville." Melissa glanced at me apologetically. "I wasn't stalking her or anything. I was in the area for a client meeting, but I saw Ryan's Audi in the visitor parking at 11 in the morning on a Tuesday. The precision of this detail, the specific time, the visitor parking, cemented the reality I was still struggling to accept. Ryan wasn't in back-to-back meetings today. He was with her. My phone buzzed with a text. "Ryan. Hey, beautiful. In meetings all afternoon but should wrap up by 7. Can't wait to see you. Missed you like crazy. Love you." The casual deception turned my shock into something hotter, sharper. Had it been this easy for him all along, to lie with such effortless conviction? "Emma?" Melissa's voice pulled me back. "Do you want me to take you to my place instead? You don't have to go home right now." Home. The 4-bedroom brownstone we'd purchased 3 years ago, Planning for the family we would start when the time was right. The time had never seemed right for Ryan. Always another promotion to chase, another deal to close. Meanwhile, my biological clock ticked louder each year. No, I decided, a strange calm settling over me. Take me home. Are you sure? Ryan he won't be there, I said with certainty, holding up my phone to show her his text. He thinks I'm landing at 7. The flight information I gave him was deliberately wrong. This had been my little surprise, arriving home hours earlier than expected to have time to prepare a special homecoming dinner. The irony wasn't lost on me. What are you gonna do? Melissa asked, concern etched across her features. I stared out the window at the familiar cityscape, the spring sunshine glinting off glass skyscrapers and sparkling on Lake Michigan. 2 weeks ago, I'd left Chicago as a happily married doctor, embarking on a humanitarian mission. Now I was returning as, what exactly? A fool? A victim? A soon-to-be ex-wife? I don't know yet, I admitted, but I need to see it for myself. The house. Whatever evidence there is. I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with before I confront him. As we exited the expressway, navigating through the city streets toward Lincoln Park, I felt myself shifting into the clinical detachment I relied on during medical emergencies. Assess the situation, gather information, make a diagnosis, determine treatment options. Except this time, the patient was my marriage, and I was increasingly certain it was terminal. Our brownstone looked exactly as I'd left it 2 weeks earlier, the carefully tended window boxes blooming with spring flowers, the freshly painted navy blue door with its gleaming brass knocker, the welcome mat still slightly askew as it always was. The familiar sight sent an unexpected pang through my chest. How could everything look so normal when nothing was? Do you want me to come in with you? Melissa asked as she pulled my suitcase from her trunk. Part of me desperately wanted her company, a buffer against whatever discoveries awaited inside. But another part, the part that had managed emergency rooms and crisis situations in under-equipped rural clinics, needed to face this alone. I think I need to do this by myself, I said. But thank you, for everything. Call me anytime, she insisted, hugging me again. Day or night? I mean it, Emma. I nodded, knowing I was lucky to have her loyalty, even as I grappled with the absence of my husband's. Inside, the house was pristinely clean, unusually so for Ryan, who typically left a trail of discarded ties and empty coffee cups in his wake. The air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and something else. Perfume? I moved through the downstairs rooms, noting small discrepancies from the home I'd left. A candle I didn't recognize on the coffee table. Wine glasses in the drying rack, 2 of them, though Ryan rarely drank alone. Our bedroom revealed more telling evidence. The sheets were different, not the navy blue set that had been on the bed when I left, but the crisp white ones usually reserved for guests. The bathroom gleamed, free of Ryan's usual clutter of shaving equipment and hair products. He had cleaned up, erased the evidence, replaced the sheets. I sat on the edge of the bed, our bed, where apparently my husband had been sleeping with another woman, and tried to process the implications. This wasn't a one-time mistake, a drunken error in judgment. This was calculated, sustained. The systematic betrayal of everything we had promised each other. My medical bag sat where I'd left it in the corner of the bedroom, and the sight suddenly reminded me of something. I had installed a small security camera disguised as a clock radio before leaving for Tanzania, not out of suspicion, but because of a rash of break-ins reported in our neighborhood. The camera uploaded footage to a cloud server I could access remotely, but I'd never checked it while abroad, too busy with the clinic and too trusting of my husband. With trembling fingers, I opened my laptop and navigated to the security app. 2 weeks of footage awaited, organized by date and triggered by motion detection. I clicked on the first night after my departure. The bedroom footage showed Ryan returning home late, checking his phone repeatedly before getting ready for bed. Nothing unusual. I fast-forwarded through several uneventful nights before pausing at footage from 5 days into my trip. Ryan entered the bedroom, but he wasn't alone. Jessica followed, her hand in his, laughing at something he said. I watched, a strange numbness spreading through me as my husband led another woman to our bed. Before it went further, I closed the laptop, unable to witness the actual intimacy. I didn't need to see more. The timestamp confirmed what Melissa had told me. This had been going on for at least 10 days, and the casual way they'd entered the bedroom suggested it wasn't the first time. My phone buzzed with another text from Ryan. Ordered your favorite takeout from Sapori for tonight. Thought you might be too tired to cook. See you soon? Can't wait. The thoughtfulness of the gesture, remembering my favorite Italian restaurant, now seemed like another twist of the knife. How could he be this person who cheated, lied, and betrayed, while simultaneously being the attentive husband who remembered my favorite pasta dish? I checked the time, 3:45 p.m. According to his text, Ryan wouldn't be home until around 7 OIG. But if Melissa had seen his car at Jessica's apartment this morning, where was he now? Was he still with her? Were they saying goodbye, knowing I'd be home tonight? The clinical detachment I'd been maintaining began to crack, giving way to a fury I scarcely recognized. I wanted answers. I wanted the truth. Not in carefully managed pieces, but all of it, in all its ugly entirety. Before I could reconsider, I was dialing Jessica Parker's office number, which I'd called several times before when trying to reach Ryan during late work nights. Jessica Parker speaking, she answered, her voice polished and professional. Hi, Jessica. It's Emma, Ryan's wife. I kept my tone deliberately casual. I just got back from Tanzania and I'm trying to track down my husband. Is he in the office with you today? The momentary silence on the other end spoke volumes. Emma, welcome back. Her voice was an octave higher than before. Ryan's not here right now. He mentioned he had client meetings off-site today. I think he was planning to leave early to pick you up from the airport. Another lie. I closed my eyes, gathering my composure. That's strange, I said, because I saw his car in your visitor parking this morning, around 11. The silence that followed confirmed everything. I don't know what you're talking about, Jessica finally managed, her confident tone faltering. Ryan and I had breakfast with the Westridge client this morning, but that was at the Peninsula, not my apartment. Jessica, I said quietly, please don't lie to me. I already know. I have video of you in my bedroom 5 days ago. The sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line was followed by a muffled sound, her hand covering the phone perhaps, as she spoke to someone else in the room. When she returned, her voice had changed, less defensive and more resigned. Emma, I'm so sorry. We didn't plan for this to happen. The "we" hit me like a physical blow. Not just Jessica's betrayal of professional boundaries or basic female solidarity, but the unified front she implied. She and Ryan together, a "we" that excluded me. Where is he now? I asked, surprised by the steadiness of my voice. Another pause. He's here, at my apartment. He came back after our client meeting. Put him on the phone. Emma, Put him on the phone, Jessica. My tone left no room for argument. There was rustling, murmured voices, then Ryan's familiar baritone filled my ear. Emma, what's going on? I thought your flight wasn't until... I'm at home, I interrupted. Our home, where you've apparently been sleeping with your colleague in our bed. The silence that followed seemed to stretch into infinity. Emma, he finally said, his voice dropping into the soothing tone he used when trying to diffuse tense situations. I can explain. This isn't what you think. Really? Because I think you've been having an affair with Jessica while I was treating sick children in Tanzania. I think you've been bringing her to our house, into our bed. I think you've been lying to me since the day I left. Is any of that incorrect? His hesitation told me everything. Where are you right now? He asked instead of answering. I told you. I'm at home, where apparently you've been playing house with another woman. I'm coming home, he said. We need to talk about this in person. Just wait there, okay? Don't do anything until I get there. The request struck me as absurd. Don't do anything? Like what? Don't set fire to his clothes? Don't change the locks? Don't call a divorce attorney? Fine, I replied, a plan forming even as I spoke. I'll be here. After ending the call, I sat motionless for several minutes, allowing the full reality to settle over me. Ryan was coming home to explain, to offer whatever justifications or excuses he'd managed to construct in the panic of being discovered. And I had a choice to make about how to handle that conversation. The part of me trained in emergency medicine, the doctor who had treated everything from broken bones to tropical diseases, recognized the symptoms of shock beginning to set in. Elevated heart rate, shallow breathing, a certain emotional detachment that was both protective and concerning. I focused on my breathing, using the same techniques I taught anxious patients. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 7, exhale for 8. Gradually, the fog of shock began to recede, replaced by a clarity that was almost startling. I didn't want to be here when Ryan arrived. I didn't want to hear his explanations or witness his performance of remorse. After 2 weeks of providing care to others in Tanzania, I needed to care for myself. And that meant not subjecting myself to what would inevitably be a painful, manipulative conversation. Moving with newfound purpose, I repacked essential items into my suitcase. Enough clothes for a few days, important documents, medication, toiletries. I had no specific destination in mind, only the certainty that I couldn't stay in this house tonight, surrounded by evidence of betrayal. As I zipped my suitcase, my phone chimed with a text from Melissa. Checking in. You okay? Need anything? Her timing was perfect, as it had been so often in our 15 years of friendship. I replied immediately. Can I stay with you for a few days? Ryan's on his way home from Jessica's apartment. Not ready to talk to him yet. Her response came seconds later. Of course. Doors open. Wine's ready. I took one last look around the bedroom that no longer felt like a sanctuary. The framed wedding photo on the dresser. Ryan and me beaming on the shores of Lake Michigan, so certain of our future together. The his and hers closet where his expensive suits hung beside my more practical wardrobe. The king-sized bed where we had slept, loved, dreamed, and planned, and where he had betrayed everything we built. With steady hands, I placed my house key and wedding rings on the nightstand. Then I wrote a simple note on the notepad we kept by the phone. I know everything. Don't call me. I'll contact you when I'm ready to talk. The doorbell rang just as I finished writing. Too soon for Ryan to have arrived from Jessica's Streeterville apartment, given typical Chicago traffic. I approached cautiously, peering through the peephole to see a delivery person holding a large bag from Sapori Trattoria, the takeout Ryan had ordered for our reunion dinner. I opened the door, accepted the delivery with a mechanical smile, and left the bag untouched on the kitchen counter. One final symbol of the thoughtful husband who no longer existed, if he ever had at all. Then I walked out the front door, suitcase in hand, into an uncertain future I had never anticipated but now had to face. Melissa's condo in Evanston provided the sanctuary I desperately needed. Located in a converted warehouse with exposed brick walls and soaring ceilings, it reflected her artistic sensibilities and independent spirit. Most importantly, it was 14 miles and a psychological universe away from the brownstone in Lincoln Park. I made up the guest room, she said, taking my suitcase as I entered. And I wasn't kidding about the wine. True to her word, an open bottle of Cabernet and 2 glasses waited on her coffee table. I sank onto her oversized sofa, suddenly aware of the bone-deep exhaustion that transcended jet lag. He's called 6 times since I left the house, I said, glancing at my silenced phone. Texted even more. Are you going to respond? I shook my head. Not tonight. Probably not tomorrow either. I need time to think without his voice in my head. Melissa nodded, handing me a generously filled glass. What do you need right now? Talk? Distraction? Sleep? Honestly, a shower first? I've been traveling for almost 2 days, and then... Go, she encouraged. Use whatever you need. I put fresh towels in the bathroom. The hot water sluiced over me, washing away the grime of international travel but doing little to cleanse the emotional devastation. As a doctor, I had developed the ability to compartmentalize, to set aside personal concerns while focusing on patients' needs. That skill had allowed me to function through the airport reunion and the drive home, but now, alone in the steam-filled bathroom, the compartment burst open. I sobbed under the shower spray, releasing the shock, betrayal, and humiliation in racking waves. 12 years together, 5 dating, 7 married. A relationship I had believed was solid, built on mutual respect and shared goals, despite the occasional friction about work hours and family planning. How had I misread everything so completely? When I emerged, wrapped in Melissa's fluffy bathrobe with my hair twisted in a towel, I felt hollowed out, but somehow clearer. She had ordered Thai food, remembering I found it comforting, and set it out on the coffee table alongside fresh glasses of wine. Feel any better? She asked. Cleaner at least. I managed a weak smile. Thank you for this. For everything today. We ate in companionable silence for a while before Melissa spoke again. I need to tell you something else, she said, setting down her fork. Something I should have mentioned earlier, but you were already dealing with so much. The serious tone of her voice made my stomach clench. What is it? Last week when I saw Ryan's car at Jessica's apartment, it wasn't the first time. She took a deep breath. About 3 months ago, before you were planning your Tanzania trip, I was driving home late from a gallery opening in Streeterville. I saw Ryan coming out of her building. It was nearly midnight. 3 months ago, well before my trip, while I was working night shifts at the hospital, believing Ryan was at home or at the office. Why didn't you tell me then? I asked, my voice barely audible. Melissa's eyes filled with tears. He had a folder of papers. I convinced myself it was work-related, a late meeting with a colleague who happened to live nearby. I didn't want to upset you over what might have been nothing. She reached for my hand. I've been questioning that decision ever since. If I had said something then, maybe I wouldn't have gone to Tanzania, I finished for her. Maybe I would have discovered this sooner. I'm so sorry, Emma. I was trying to protect you, but maybe I just made it worse. I squeezed her hand. You have nothing to apologize for. Ryan is the one who betrayed me, not you. Yet even as I absolved Melissa, a small irrational part of me wished she had shared her suspicions sooner. Those 2 weeks in Tanzania, the exhausting days at the clinic, the nights spent missing my husband, and composing emails about the children I was treating and the difference we were making, all of it felt tainted now, knowing he was using my absence to deepen his affair. My phone buzzed again on the coffee table. Ryan's face appeared on the screen, a candid shot from our hiking trip to Colorado last summer, his smile wide and genuine beneath the brim of his baseball cap. I stared at the image, trying to reconcile it with the man who had spent the day at his lover's apartment while waiting for his wife to return from humanitarian work. Do you want to get that? Melissa asked gently. I shook my head and turned the phone face down. Not yet. First, I need you to tell me everything you saw, everything you know. No protecting me this time. I need the full truth. Melissa nodded, understanding the doctor in me needed complete information to make an accurate diagnosis, even when the patient was my own marriage. I'll tell you everything, she promised, and then we'll figure out your next steps together. As she began recounting the details of her observations over the past 3 months, I felt my clinical detachment returning, a protective shell around my wounded heart as I prepared to assess the true extent of the damage to my life. I awoke the next morning in Melissa's guest room, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar ceiling and the quality of light filtering through curtains that weren't mine. For one blessed moment, everything was normal, just jet lag and the discomfort of sleeping in a strange bed after a long journey. Then reality crashed back, the events of the previous day reassembling themselves in my consciousness like jagged puzzle pieces. Melissa's whisper at the airport, the evidence in our home, the call to Jessica, the abandonment of my house and marriage, at least temporarily. My phone showed 23 missed calls and 17 text messages from Ryan, along with 3 voicemails. I wasn't ready to listen to any of them. Instead, I opened my email to find a message from Dr. Abbasi, the Tanzanian physician I'd worked alongside at the clinic. He'd attached photos of some of the children we'd treated, their smiling faces a stark contrast to the emotional wreckage of my personal life. In the kitchen, I found a note from Melissa explaining she had an early meeting with a gallery client but would be back by noon, along with a spare key and instructions to help myself to anything I needed. The thoughtfulness of her friendship, from the airport pickup to the immediate offer of sanctuary, stood in sharp relief against Ryan's betrayal. After making coffee, I settled at Melissa's dining table with my laptop, forcing myself to approach my situation with the same methodical focus I would apply to a complex medical case. First step, understanding the full scope of the problem. I opened the security camera app again, steeling myself for what I might find. This time I didn't focus on the bedroom footage, but instead checked the living room and kitchen cameras. Over the course of 2 hours, I documented 7 separate occasions when Jessica had been in our home, including 3 overnight stays. The familiarity with which she moved through the house, helping herself to wine from our rack, knowing which cabinet held the glasses, casually draping her jacket over my chair at the dining table, suggested this arrangement predated my Tanzania trip, confirming Melissa's earlier sighting. With clinical detachment, I noted dates and times in a document, creating a timeline of betrayal that stretched back at least 3 months based on the available evidence. The doctor in me recognized this exercise as necessary for accurate diagnosis, even as the wife in me felt each documented instance like a fresh wound. By the time Melissa returned, I had compiled a comprehensive picture of Ryan's infidelity, cross-referenced with my own schedule of hospital shifts and preparation for the Tanzania trip. The pattern was clear. Ryan had been seeing Jessica primarily when I worked overnight shifts at the hospital, but my 2-week absence had allowed the affair to escalate from occasional rendezvous to something approaching domestic cohabitation. "You look terrible," Melissa observed, setting down grocery bags on the counter. "Have you eaten anything?" I shook my head, suddenly aware of the hollow feeling in my stomach and the slight tremor in my hands. Signs of low blood sugar I would have immediately recognized in a patient, but had ignored in myself. "I've been documenting," I said, gesturing to my laptop. Melissa glanced at the screen, her expression softening with concern. "Oh, Emma, was that necessary?" "For me, yes," I replied. "I need to understand exactly what happened and for how long. No ambiguity, no room for Ryan to minimize or reframe when I eventually talk to him." She began unpacking groceries, the familiar domestic activity grounding in its normalcy. "Have you decided when that will be?" "Not yet, but I need to go back to the house today to get more of my things. I can't live out of a suitcase indefinitely. Do you want me to come with you?" I considered the offer. Part of me wanted the buffer of Melissa's presence, but another part, the independent, competent physician who had traveled alone to Tanzania and managed medical crises with limited resources, needed to handle this myself. "No, but thank you. I need to do this alone. I'll go while Ryan's at work." I paused, a realization dawning. Although I don't actually know if he went to work today, or if he's waiting at the house, hoping I'll come back. Melissa pulled out her phone. "I can find out. Jake's law firm is in the same building as Ryan's bank. I can ask if he's seen Ryan come in today." Jake, Melissa's ex-boyfriend from 2 years ago, had remained friendly with our social circle after their amicable breakup. Within 15 minutes, she had confirmation. Ryan had been spotted entering the downtown office building, looking stressed, but definitely at work. The path temporarily clear, I gathered my resolve along with Melissa's spare key. "I'll be back in a couple of hours. If Ryan somehow shows up here looking for me, I'll tell him you're not ready to talk," Melissa finished for me, "and that he should respect that if he has any hope of you ever hearing him out." As I drove toward Lincoln Park in Melissa's borrowed car, I found myself rehearsing what I would say when I eventually faced Ryan. The practiced speeches felt hollow, inadequate to convey the seismic shift his actions had caused not just in our marriage, but in my understanding of the past 12 years. By the time I parked outside our brownstone, I had abandoned the idea of a prepared statement. Whatever conversation awaited us would need to emerge organically from the wreckage he had created. First, though, I needed clothes, important documents, and time to process in the space that had once been our shared home, but now felt irrevocably altered. The house felt different when I entered for the second time since my return. Not just tainted by the knowledge of betrayal, but somehow smaller, less significant. This carefully curated space, with its artfully arranged furniture and tasteful decor, had been the setting for what I now recognized as an elaborate performance of marriage, rather than the real thing. In the kitchen, I noticed immediately that the Sapori takeout bag was gone from the counter where I'd left it. In its place was a bouquet of peonies, my favorite flowers, with a handwritten note I didn't bother to read. Ryan's standard apology script typically involved grand gestures, expensive flowers, jewelry, weekend getaways. The peonies were on brand for his damage control strategy, but woefully inadequate for the magnitude of his betrayal. I moved methodically through the house, filling 2 large suitcases with clothing, shoes, and personal items. In our home office, I collected important documents, birth certificate, passport, medical licenses, financial statements, and downloaded essential files from the desktop computer. Throughout this process, I maintained the emotional detachment that had protected me thus far, focusing on the practical tasks rather than their significance. When I reached our bedroom, however, the clinical facade cracked. The bed had been made with fresh sheets, not the white guest set I'd found yesterday, but our everyday navy blue bedding, as if Ryan was literally trying to reset the scene to how it had been before my discovery. On my pillow lay a small velvet jewelry box that hadn't been there yesterday. Curiosity overrode my determination to avoid his manipulations. I opened the box to find a pair of tanzanite earrings, an obvious reference to my recent trip, and an equally obvious attempt to re-establish connection through a meaningful gift. The gesture might have been touching if it wasn't so transparently calculated. I closed the box without taking the earrings and continued packing, but the emotional armor I'd maintained began to show hairline fractures. This had been our bedroom, our sanctuary. We had talked for hours in this room, made love, discussed our dreams for the future, held each other through disappointments and celebrated triumphs. Had any of it been real? Had he been thinking of Jessica even then? My phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. "Ryan just called me looking for you. I said you needed space and would contact him when ready." He sounded desperate. I appreciated her enforcement of the boundary I'd established, but the information added urgency to my task. If Ryan was reaching out to Melissa, he might decide to leave work early to find me at the house. As I zipped the second suitcase, my gaze fell on our wedding photo on the dresser. On impulse, I picked it up, studying the younger versions of ourselves captured in that moment of pure joy and optimism. I had been so certain then, of Ryan, of our future, of the life we would build together. A sound at the front door shattered my reverie, the unmistakable insertion of a key in the lock. Ryan, home hours earlier than expected. Flight instinct kicked in immediately, but I tamped it down. Running away would only delay the inevitable confrontation. Better to face it now, on my terms, than be caught off guard later. I placed the wedding photo face down on the dresser and squared my shoulders, doctor mode engaging automatically as I prepared to face a difficult situation with as much composure as possible. "Emma!" Ryan's voice carried up the stairs, a note of cautious hope evident even in that single word. "Your car's not here, but I saw the light on. Are you home?" Footsteps on the stairs. Then he appeared in the bedroom doorway, his tall frame filling the space that had once welcomed him, but now seemed invaded by his presence. He looked terrible, dress shirt wrinkled, hair uncombed, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept. The perfect picture of the remorseful husband. "You're here," he said softly, relief washing over his features. "I've been so worried. You weren't answering your phone, and when I got home last night and found your rings..." He gestured helplessly toward the nightstand where I'd left my engagement and wedding rings. "I'm just getting some things," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm not staying." Ryan moved further into the room, stopping when he saw the packed suitcases on the bed. "Emma, please. We need to talk about this. What you think happened." "What I think happened," I interrupted, my carefully maintained composure slipping. "I don't think anything, Ryan. I know. I know Jessica has been in our home, in our bed. I know this didn't just start while I was in Tanzania. I know you've been lying to me for months." He paled visibly, clearly not expecting this level of specific knowledge. "How did you... Does it matter?" I cut him off. "Security cameras, Melissa's observations, Jessica's own confirmation when I called her yesterday. The evidence is overwhelming, so please don't insult my intelligence by denying it." Ryan's shoulders slumped as the possibility of minimizing or explaining away his actions evaporated. "I never meant to hurt you," he said finally, the most predictable line in the cheater's handbook. "And yet," I replied, gesturing to my packed bags, "here we are." Ryan took a tentative step closer, his expression a carefully constructed mask of remorse that might have convinced me, if I hadn't seen the same performance after lesser offenses. Forgotten anniversaries, missed dinner plans, work commitments that repeatedly took precedence over my needs. "Emma, I know I've made a terrible mistake," he began, his voice catching in what seemed like genuine emotion. "But our marriage is worth fighting for. 12 years together, that means something. What we have is special." "Had," I corrected quietly. "What we had was special, or at least I thought it was." "It still is," he insisted, moving toward me until only a few feet separated us. "People make mistakes, Emma. Horrible, stupid mistakes they regret immediately. This thing with Jessica, it didn't mean anything. It was just what?" I prompted when he trailed off, unable to find an acceptable completion to that sentence. "Just sex? Just a diversion while I was working night shifts saving lives? Just an opportunity he couldn't resist when a younger, available woman showed interest?" Ryan ran a hand through his already disheveled hair. "I don't know. A moment of weakness that spiraled out of control. But it's over. I ended it with her yesterday, as soon as I realized you knew. I told her I love my wife, and I'm committed to my marriage." The revelation that he had only ended the affair after being caught did nothing to support his claim of regret or commitment. If anything, it confirmed that he would have continued indefinitely if Melissa hadn't seen his car and whispered the truth in my ear. "How generous of you," I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "Ending your affair now that you've been exposed. Should I be grateful?" "That's not what I meant," Ryan backpedaled. "I'm just trying to show you that I'm serious about fixing this, about earning back your trust." I studied the man before me, the husband I had loved and trusted implicitly until 24 hours ago. Objectively, he looked the same. The strong jaw I had always found attractive, the expressive brown eyes that could communicate so much without words, the slight crease between his brows that appeared when he was worried or concentrating. Yet he seemed like a stranger now, or worse, a familiar person revealed to be something entirely different than I had believed. "Why?" I asked finally, the question that had been circling in my mind since Melissa's whispered revelation. "Why Jessica? Why risk our marriage? Was I not enough? Did I do something wrong?" "No!" Ryan's response was immediate and emphatic. "You didn't do anything wrong, Emma. This wasn't about you." "It affects me," I pointed out. "It affects our marriage, our home, our future. So it is about me, whether you want to admit it or not. He sank onto the edge of the bed, careful to avoid my packed suitcases. I know. You're right. He stared at his hands for a long moment before continuing. I don't have a good explanation. Jessica was there. She was interested. She made me feel, I don't know, important? Exciting? When you were working those long hospital shifts and then planning your Tanzania trip, I felt sidelined. Like your career was always going to come first. The justification, placing implicit blame on my professional commitment while casting himself as the neglected husband, ignited a flash of anger that burned through my clinical detachment. Don't you dare, I said, my voice low but intense. Don't you dare blame my medical career for your decision to cheat. I save lives, Ryan. I heal people. And yes, sometimes that means night shifts and volunteer work and putting others' needs ahead of my own comfort. But you knew that when you married me. You claimed to admire it. I do admire it, he insisted. I've always been proud of you, of the doctor you are. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Explain it to me. Help me understand how my husband could sleep with another woman in our bed while I was treating malnourished children halfway around the world. The stark phrasing seemed to hit Ryan like a physical blow. When he looked up, tears had formed in his eyes. I can't explain it, he admitted. There's no justification that makes it okay. I was selfish and weak, and I made choices that hurt the person I love most in the world. And I would give anything, to take it back. The raw honesty of this admission, the first without deflection or excuse, penetrated the protective shell I had constructed around my emotions. For the first time since the airport, I felt tears forming, the full weight of loss pressing against my chest. I don't know if this can be fixed, Ryan, I said quietly. I don't know if I want to fix it. Please, he whispered, standing again and cautiously approaching until he could take my hands in his. When I didn't pull away immediately, he continued, just don't make any final decisions yet. Give us a chance. Counseling, therapy, whatever it takes. 12 years, Emma. 12 years of building a life together. That has to be worth fighting for. His touch, once so familiar and comforting, now felt foreign, complicated by the knowledge that these same hands had caressed another woman. Yet some treacherous part of me responded to the connection, to the history between us that couldn't be erased by even this devastating betrayal. Before I could formulate a response, my phone buzzed with a text from the hospital. Emergency at Children's Memorial. All available physicians requested for multi-car accident victims. The message was a stark reminder of the world beyond this bedroom drama, a world where children were injured and needed the skills I had spent years developing. In that moment, the contrast between my purpose-driven work and the tangled mess of my personal life provided unexpected clarity. I have to go, I said, gently extracting my hands from Ryan's. There's an emergency at the hospital. Now? He looked stricken. Emma, we're in the middle of the most important conversation of our marriage. Children are hurt, I replied simply. They need doctors. This conversation will have to wait. As I gathered my purse and prepared to leave, Ryan made one last appeal. Promise me you'll come back. Promise we'll talk again before you make any decisions. I paused at the bedroom door, looking back at the man who had been the center of my world for 12 years. I'll contact you when I'm ready. But I'm not coming back here tonight. I need space to think. I love you, he called as I headed down the stairs. I've never stopped loving you, Emma, not for a single day. The declaration, once cherished, now complicated by the reality of his actions, followed me out the door and into the bright spring afternoon, where life and death matters more pressing than my marital crisis awaited my attention. The emergency room at Children's Memorial Hospital pulsed with controlled chaos when I arrived. A school bus collision had resulted in multiple pediatric traumas, overwhelming the regular staff and triggering the all-hands notification I'd received. Dr. Mitchell, Dr. Patel, the chief of emergency medicine, looked up from a gurney where he was assessing a young patient. Didn't expect to see you. Thought you were still on post-Tanzania leave. I was in the area, I explained briefly, already reaching for a trauma gown and gloves. Where do you need me? He directed me to Bay 3, where a 10-year-old boy with potential internal bleeding needed assessment. The familiar rush of adrenaline and focus that accompanied medical emergencies was a welcome respite from the emotional turmoil of the past 24 hours. Here, in the controlled chaos of the ER, my skills and training had clear purpose. The path forward was dictated by protocols, experience, and the immediate needs of vulnerable patients, a stark contrast to the murky, painful terrain of betrayal and broken trust I'd been navigating in my personal life. For the next 6 hours, I moved from patient to patient, ordering tests, interpreting results, consulting with surgeons, and reassuring terrified parents. The work demanded complete concentration, allowing no space for rumination on Ryan's tearful apologies or the mental images of him with Jessica that had been tormenting me since Melissa's whispered revelation. "You're a sight for sore eyes," commented Sophia, a nurse I'd worked with for years as we stabilized a patient together. "The Tanzania trip must have agreed with you. You seem different somehow." I managed to smile, wondering what she would think if she knew the complete truth, that in the past 24 hours, my entire life had imploded, and I was functioning on autopilot, using work as a shield against emotional collapse. "Africa was amazing," I said instead. "Challenging but rewarding. And now you're back just in time for a major trauma event." She shook her head. "No rest for the dedicated. Does Ryan even remember what you look like?" The casual mention of my husband sent an unexpected pang through my chest, but I maintained my professional demeanor. "He's adjusting to having me home," I replied, the understatement of the year. By the time the emergency had stabilized and I'd handed off my patients to the overnight team, it was past 10 p.m. I stood in the doctor's lounge, suddenly uncertain where to go. The thought of returning to Melissa's condo felt right, but I hesitated to impose further on her generosity. Yet the alternative, a hotel room alone with my thoughts, or worse, returning to the house where Ryan was undoubtedly waiting, seemed equally unappealing. My phone, which I'd silenced during the emergency response, showed multiple missed calls and texts from Ryan, along with a single message from Melissa. "Take all the time you need at the house. I'm home whenever you're ready to come back. Guest room is yours as long as you want it." The simple affirmation of support brought unexpected tears to my eyes. In the midst of the most disorienting crisis of my adult life, Melissa's friendship was a constant I could rely on. The same woman who had picked me up at the airport and whispered the painful truth was now offering continued sanctuary without question or limitation. As I changed out of scrubs back into my regular clothes, Dr. Patel appeared in the doorway of the lounge. "You did good work today, Emma," he said. "Those kids were lucky you happened to be available." "Just doing my job," I replied automatically. He studied me with the perceptive gaze that made him an excellent diagnostician. "Everything okay? You seem preoccupied, even in the middle of all this chaos." For a brief moment, I considered confiding in him. Dr. Patel was not just my boss, but a mentor of sorts, someone whose judgment I respected. But the thought of articulating the humiliating reality that my husband had been having an affair while I was doing humanitarian work was still too raw, too painful to voice aloud in this professional setting. "Just jet lag," I offered with a weak smile. "Tanzania to Chicago is a long journey." He nodded, clearly unconvinced but respectful enough not to press. "Well, take care of yourself. The department needs you at full strength, but not at the expense of your well-being." As I drove back to Melissa's condo, the city lights blurring slightly through the windshield, I reflected on Dr. Patel's concern. Take care of yourself. Such simple advice, yet so contrary to my training and instincts as a physician, where patients' needs always came first. When had I last prioritized my own well-being? Had I been neglecting myself even before Ryan's betrayal, pouring all my energy into my medical career and what I had believed was a solid marriage? The questions continued to circle as I navigated the familiar streets, my doctor's mind still trying to diagnose and treat the condition of my life, even as my heart struggled to process the seismic shift in my reality. One thing was becoming increasingly clear. Whatever decisions lay ahead regarding my marriage, I needed to approach them from a position of strength and clarity rather than reaction and pain. For tonight, that meant accepting Melissa's offered sanctuary, getting much-needed rest, and acknowledging that healing, like medicine, sometimes requires patience and time. 3 days after Melissa's whispered revelation at the airport, I found myself sitting in the tastefully appointed waiting room of Dr. Eleanor Winters, a therapist recommended by a colleague at the hospital. I hadn't returned to the house since my interrupted confrontation with Ryan, instead settling into a temporary routine at Melissa's condo while I considered my next steps. Ryan had continued his campaign of communication: calls, texts, emails, even a handwritten letter delivered to the hospital after he'd apparently realized I'd returned to work. I had responded only once, with a brief text: "I need time. Please respect that." The door to Dr. Winter's office opened, and a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked dark hair and intelligent eyes appeared. Dr. Mitchell, I'm Eleanor Winters. Please come in. The office beyond felt more like a comfortable living room than a clinical space. Overstuffed chairs, soft lighting, bookshelves lined with both academic texts and literature. I selected a chair by the window, appreciating the view of Lake Michigan in the distance. Before we begin, Dr. R. Winters said, settling into the chair opposite mine, I want to clarify that this is a space for you, Emma. Not for marriage counseling, not for reconciliation strategies, but for your own processing and healing. Is that what you're looking for? The distinction immediately put me at ease. Yes, exactly. I'm not ready to make decisions about my marriage yet. I need to understand my own feelings first. She nodded approvingly. Good. Many people in your situation rush into couples therapy before they've had a chance to process their individual emotions. That rarely works well. She picked up a notepad. So, tell me what brings you here today. Over the next 50 minutes, I recounted the events since my return from Tanzania. Melissa's whispered revelation, the evidence I'd discovered, my confrontations with Jessica and Ryan, and my temporary relocation to Melissa's condo. Dr. Winters listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but mostly allowing me to tell my story without interruption. What's most disorienting, I explained, is the sense that I've lost my ability to trust my own perception of reality. I thought we had a good marriage. Busy, certainly, with 2 demanding careers, but fundamentally solid. Was I just blind? Naive? Did I miss obvious signs because I didn't want to see them? Dr. Winters considered this thoughtfully. From what you've described, Ryan went to considerable lengths to hide his affair. Changing sheets, cleaning the house, coordinating his infidelity with your work schedule. That suggests he was deliberately deceiving you, not that you were willfully ignoring evidence. Her validation was surprisingly comforting. A professional assessment that I wasn't somehow complicit in my own betrayal through inattention or denial. There's something else, I admitted. Something I haven't told anyone, not even Melissa. Dr. Winters waited, her expression open and non-judgmental. 3 months ago, before the Tanzania trip was even planned, I thought I might be pregnant. The words emerged with difficulty, exposing a vulnerability I had protected even from my closest friend. My period was late. I was feeling nauseous in the mornings. I didn't take a test right away because I wanted to be sure. Ryan and I had been discussing starting a family for years, but the timing never seemed right for him. Always another promotion to secure, another financial goal to reach. I paused, the memory still painful despite everything that had happened since. When I finally took the test, it was negative. Just stress throwing off my cycle, apparently. But before I knew that, I had this moment of pure joy, thinking about telling Ryan, imagining his reaction. I had planned a special dinner, bought a tiny pair of baby shoes to wrap as a gift. Dr. Winters' expression remained attentive but neutral, allowing me space to continue at my own pace. According to what Melissa saw, that was right around when the affair with Jessica started. While I was imagining expanding our family, he was starting a relationship with another woman. I shook my head, still struggling to reconcile these parallel realities. How is that possible? How could he come home to me, talk about our future, make love to me, all while beginning an affair? Compartmentalization, Dr. Winters suggested. Some people are remarkably adept at separating different aspects of their lives, maintaining what feel like distinct identities in each context. Like how I can set aside personal concerns to focus completely on a patient in crisis, I noted, recognizing the mechanism even as I resented the comparison. Similar, yes, though used toward very different ends. She made a brief note before continuing. Emma, given what you've shared about the timing, I'm curious about something. You mentioned that Ryan often delayed family planning, citing career and financial goals. What prompted you to check for pregnancy at that particular time? Were you actively trying to conceive? The question caught me off guard with its perceptiveness. Not actively, no. We'd stopped using protection about 6 months earlier, with the understanding that if it happened, we'd be happy about it. But there was always a sense that Ryan was hoping it wouldn't happen quite yet. Dr. Winters nodded thoughtfully. And the Tanzania trip, whose idea was that? Mine, I admitted. After the negative pregnancy test, I was more disappointed than I expected to be. The opportunity to volunteer at the clinic came up, and it seemed like a meaningful way to use my medical skills while giving myself space to process the complicated feelings about not being pregnant. So you created distance, she observed, not unkindly. Physical and emotional space following a disappointment related to your future together. I hadn't considered this perspective before. That my decision to spend 2 weeks in Tanzania might have represented my own form of withdrawal from the marriage, albeit for very different reasons than Ryan's involvement with Jessica. I suppose I did, I acknowledged, though that hardly justifies his affair. Absolutely not, Dr. Winters agreed firmly. Understanding context is not about excusing betrayal. Ryan made choices that violated your trust and the commitments you made to each other. Nothing you did or didn't do caused or justified those choices. As our session wound toward its conclusion, Dr. Winters offered a framework that resonated deeply. Right now, Emma, you're still in the shock and information gathering phase. Before you can decide whether this marriage can be repaired or whether you even want to try, you need to allow yourself to fully experience and process the emotions his betrayal has triggered. Anger, grief, humiliation, fear, all of these are natural responses that need acknowledgement. I nodded, recognizing the wisdom in her approach. And how do I do that while still functioning in my daily life? I have patients who need me, responsibilities I can't just set aside. The same way you've already begun, she replied, by creating safe space for yourself away from the marital home, by seeking professional support, by allowing trusted friends like Melissa to help carry the burden, and by giving yourself permission to feel whatever emerges without judgment or premature pressure to get over it or make decisions before you're ready. As I left her office with another appointment scheduled for the following week, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Melissa's whisper at the airport, a tentative sense of agency. The path ahead remained uncertain, the pain still acute, but I had taken a concrete step toward healing, not for Ryan's benefit or for the sake of our marriage, but for myself. A week after my return from Tanzania, I stood outside the brownstone that no longer felt like home, keys in hand, but hesitant to enter. Ryan had texted earlier to say he would be at the office until late, giving me a window to collect more of my belongings without another confrontation. While part of me had appreciated his respect for my request for space, another part recognized the irony. His late work nights, once the perfect cover for his affair with Jessica, were now being used to accommodate my need to avoid him. Inside, the house showed subtle signs of a single occupant's neglect. Mail piled on the entry table, a coffee mug left on the counter, the plants I had meticulously cared for beginning to droop from irregular watering. I moved efficiently through the rooms, packing items I would need for a more extended stay away. Seasonal clothing, additional books and research materials, the special stethoscope my parents had given me when I graduated medical school. In our home office, I found evidence that Ryan had been sleeping on the pull-out sofa rather than in our bedroom. A pillow and folded blanket neatly arranged at one end, his laptop and work papers spread across the desk. The sight triggered an unexpected pang of something. Not quite sympathy, but a complicated recognition of how thoroughly our lives had been disrupted. As I collected financial documents from the desk drawer, a small velvet box caught my attention. Not the one containing the tanzanite earrings he had left on my pillow, but an older, more worn case I recognized from our early dating years. Inside was the sapphire pendant Ryan had given me on our first anniversary, before we were engaged. I had loved that necklace, wearing it often during medical school and residency as a tangible reminder of his support during those grueling years. Somewhere along the way, I couldn't pinpoint exactly when, I had stopped wearing it, the pendant migrating from my jewelry box to this desk drawer amid the chaos of busy professional lives. The discovery prompted me to open the bottom drawer where we kept important mementos, cards, letters, small keepsakes from significant moments in our relationship. Among them was a thick envelope of photographs from before the era of smartphones, when we still printed images of special occasions. I sat on the office floor and began looking through them, a documentary record of our 12 years together. Ryan and me on our third date, a sailing trip on Lake Michigan, both of us squinting in the bright sunlight. The night he proposed, my face tear-streaked but joyful as I displayed the ring to the camera. Our wedding day, surrounded by friends and family who believed, as we did, in the permanence of the vows we had just exchanged. The housewarming party when we purchased the brownstone, champagne glasses raised in celebration of this investment in our shared future. The physical evidence of our history together, the smiles, the shared experiences, the life we had built, created a discordant counterpoint to the reality of betrayal I was now navigating. How could the same man who had looked at me with such genuine love in these photographs have betrayed me so completely with Jessica? How could the relationship documented in these images have deteriorated into secrets and lies without my noticing the shift? My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Running late at work but hoping to be home by 9. Are you still there? Can we talk? The message presented a choice: stay and finally have the in-depth conversation we needed to have, or maintain the protective distance I had established since discovering his affair. Dr. Winters had emphasized the importance of processing my own emotions before engaging in any decision-making conversations about the future of our marriage. Was I ready for that confrontation, or would it derail the fragile emotional equilibrium I had been working to establish? Before I could decide, another text arrived, this one from Melissa. "Dinner's ready whenever you're back. No pressure, just here if you need me." The contrast between the two messages crystallized something important. Ryan's communication centered on his desire to talk, to explain, to potentially begin repairing what he had broken. Melissa's focused solely on supporting me, with no agenda beyond offering comfort during a difficult time. One sought to pull me back into the complicated emotional terrain of betrayal and potential reconciliation. The other offered continued sanctuary while I sorted through my feelings at my own pace. I gathered the photographs and financial documents, adding them to my suitcase alongside clothing and personal items. Then I composed a response to Ryan. "Already left. Not ready to talk yet. Still need space." The decision felt right, a recognition that despite the history documented in those photographs, despite the years invested and the life built together, I needed to prioritize my own healing before engaging in the difficult conversations that lay ahead. Whatever the ultimate outcome of this crisis, reconciliation or divorce, it would emerge from a place of clarity rather than confusion, strength rather than vulnerability. As I locked the brownstone behind me, I understood that I was not just securing the physical structure, but also symbolically containing the memories and history it represented. Not abandoning them, but creating necessary distance to gain perspective on what they truly meant and what they might still be worth. 2 weeks after Melissa's whispered revelation at the airport, I sat on the bench by Lake Michigan where Ryan had proposed 7 years earlier. The spring sunshine sparkled on the water, warming my face despite the cool breeze coming off the lake. I had chosen this location deliberately for the conversation that would determine the future of our marriage. Neutral territory, yet steeped in the history and meaning of our relationship. Ryan arrived precisely at noon as we had arranged, looking simultaneously familiar and strange. The husband I had loved for 12 years, now viewed through the lens of betrayal and 2 weeks of separation. He had lost weight, his usual confidence diminished by the uncertainty of where we stood. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, sitting beside me but maintaining a respectful distance. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," I admitted, "but we can't stay in limbo forever." The 2 weeks since my discovery of his affair had been transformative in unexpected ways. Through therapy with Dr. Winters, conversations with Melissa, and my own internal reflection, I had gradually moved from shock and raw pain toward a clearer understanding of what I needed and wanted for my future. The process hadn't been linear. Moments of clarity alternated with waves of grief and anger, but each day had brought me closer to the decision I now needed to articulate. "Before you say anything," Ryan began, "I want you to know that I've started therapy, individual counseling twice weekly. I'm trying to understand why I made such destructive choices, how I could have betrayed you and everything we built together." I nodded, acknowledging his effort without offering the immediate validation he might have hoped for. "That's good, Ryan. I hope it helps you, regardless of what happens with us. It's already helping me recognize patterns I wasn't aware of," he continued. "The ways I've compartmentalized different aspects of my life, how I've used work and achievement to avoid emotional vulnerability." He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. "None of that excuses what I did to you. Nothing could. But I want you to know I'm committed to changing, to being worthy of another chance, if you're willing to consider that possibility." The earnestness in his expression was familiar, the same intensity he brought to professional challenges, now focused on salvaging our marriage. 2 weeks earlier, his apparent sincerity might have swayed me, my love for him overriding the rational assessment of whether reconciliation was truly possible or wise. But the emotional distance I had established had provided crucial perspective. "I've been doing my own work these past 2 weeks," I said. "Therapy, reflection, really examining our marriage and what it's meant to both of us. And I've realized something important." I turned slightly to face him directly. "I deserve better, Ryan. Better than betrayal. Better than lies. Better than discovering my husband's infidelity from my best friend at an airport." His face fell, anticipating rejection, but I wasn't finished. "The thing is, I think you know that too. I think beneath the compartmentalization and the justifications, You know I deserved better than what you gave me." I took a deep breath, articulating the conclusion I had reached after hours of therapy and soul-searching. "And I hope, that the man I married, the man I still believe exists somewhere beneath the choices you've made recently, wants to be better, wants to be worthy of the trust and love I gave so freely for 12 years. Ryan's eyes filled with tears, hope and uncertainty warring in his expression. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying I'm willing to try," I clarified. "Not to resume our marriage as if nothing happened, but to see if we can build something new from the ashes of what you destroyed. Something honest, with stronger boundaries and better communication. Something worthy of both of us." The relief that washed over his features was tempered by the gravity of my next words. "But I need you to understand something fundamental, Ryan. This isn't forgiveness. Not yet. That may come with time, but it's not where I am today. This is me making a choice to explore whether what we had, what we might still have, is worth the difficult work of rebuilding. And it is going to be difficult, more so than you probably realize right now. I understand," he said solemnly. "Whatever it takes, however long it takes, I'm committed to doing the work. It starts with complete honesty," I said firmly. "About Jessica, about any other betrayals I don't yet know about the feelings and thoughts that led you to make these choices. I can't heal what I don't know exists." Ryan nodded, a flicker of anxiety crossing his features but replaced by resolution. "Complete transparency. You deserve nothing less." As we sat together on that bench, the place where our journey toward marriage had begun years earlier, I felt neither the blind optimism of that earlier time nor the crushing despair of the past 2 weeks. Instead, I experienced something more nuanced. A clear-eyed assessment of the challenges ahead, balanced by the recognition of what might still be worth saving. "We should establish some parameters," I said, the practical physician in me emerging. "I'm not moving back into the house immediately. I need the continued space of staying at Melissa's while we begin this process." "Whatever you need," Ryan agreed readily. "I just want the chance to prove myself to you again." As we continued discussing the practical aspects of this tentative reconciliation, scheduling couples therapy alongside our individual counseling, establishing communication boundaries, addressing the professional complications of his relationship with Jessica, I felt an unexpected sense of empowerment. The woman who had stood shell-shocked in the airport as Melissa whispered the truth of betrayal was now directing the terms of potential healing, centered in her own worth, rather than desperate to reclaim what had been lost. Whether our marriage ultimately survived this crucible remained uncertain. But I had survived it, emerging stronger and clearer about my own value and what I would and would not accept in my most intimate relationship. That knowledge, hard-won through pain and reflection, was perhaps the most significant outcome of Melissa's whispered revelation, not just the exposure of Ryan's betrayal, but the revelation of my own resilience. 6 months after that pivotal conversation by the lake, I stood in our bedroom, our actual bedroom, in the brownstone I had cautiously moved back into just 8 weeks earlier. The summer heat had given way to autumn crispness, and I was packing again, though under very different circumstances than the hasty collection of essentials after discovering Ryan's affair. This time, I was preparing for another trip to Tanzania, not an escape from marital disappointment, but a planned return to the clinic where I had volunteered 6 months earlier. The difference was that Ryan would be joining me for the first week, having arranged a sabbatical from the investment firm, where he had recently accepted a position with fewer responsibilities and more reasonable hours. Our journey over the past 6 months had been neither linear nor easy. Couples therapy had exposed painful truths beyond the affair itself, patterns of communication breakdown, unspoken resentments, diverging priorities that had created fertile ground for betrayal. Individual therapy had helped us each address our own contributions to the relationship's vulnerability, though never in a way that excused or justified Ryan's decision to cheat. The most difficult session had been the disclosure therapy, where Ryan had finally provided complete details of his relationship with Jessica. When it started, how it progressed, the extent of their involvement. The clinical setting and therapist's facilitation had made the painful revelations manageable, but absorbing the full truth had triggered a setback in my healing process, requiring additional time and space before I felt ready to move back home. Jessica had transferred to the firm's Boston office shortly after my return from Tanzania, a decision that had apparently been her own, rather than prompted by Ryan or his superiors. Her absence had removed one potential complication, though the occasional client who mentioned her name still triggered a momentary tightness in my chest. "Need help with anything?" Ryan asked from the doorway, his presence in our bedroom still carrying a slight awkwardness despite the progress we had made. We had resumed physical intimacy gradually, allowing our emotional connection to strengthen before reintroducing the vulnerability of sexual relationship. "I think I'm almost set," I replied, zipping the suitcase that contained medical supplies alongside my personal items. Dr. Abbasi emailed the updated list of medications they need. We should be able to fit everything in our checked luggage. Ryan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I'm nervous," he admitted. "Not about Tanzania itself, but about meeting the people who matter so much to you there. After everything that's happened, I want them to see me as worthy of you." The simple honesty of this confession, the vulnerability he would have concealed in earlier phases of our relationship, represented one of the most significant changes in our rebuilt marriage. Ryan had learned to express uncertainty and fear without perceiving them as weaknesses, while I had learned to create space for his emotions without feeling responsible for resolving them. "They'll see what I see," I assured him. "Someone who has made mistakes but is committed to growth and redemption. Someone who shows up even when it's difficult." He smiled, crossing the room to help me close the overfilled suitcase. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for giving us this second chance. I know every day how close I came to losing everything that truly matters." As we finished packing for a journey neither of us could have imagined 6 months earlier, I reflected on the precarious path that had led us here. There had been moments during those early weeks after Melissa's whispered revelation when I had been certain our marriage was beyond salvation, the betrayal too profound to overcome. Other moments when reconciliation had seemed possible, but not necessarily desirable, when I had questioned whether the effort required to rebuild trust might be better directed toward creating a new life independently. The decision to engage in the painful, complex work of reconstructing a relationship after infidelity, had not been made in a single moment by the lake, but recommitted to daily through small choices and consistent actions. Ryan's unwavering dedication to therapy, his willingness to face the full impact of his betrayal without defensiveness, his patience as I moved through unpredictable cycles of progress and regression, all had gradually rebuilt what his affair had shattered. Not the same marriage we had before, that was irretrievably lost, but something new that incorporated hard-won wisdom alongside the love that had somehow survived beneath the rubble of betrayal. As we carried our suitcases downstairs, I caught sight of a small framed photograph on the entryway table, a new addition to our home decor. It showed Melissa and me at her art gallery opening the previous month, arms around each other's shoulders, both smiling broadly at the camera. "I still need to thank her properly," Ryan commented, noticing the direction of my gaze, "for having the courage to tell you the truth that day at the airport. If she hadn't, we wouldn't be here," I finished for him. "Not like this anyway." The observation contained the paradox at the heart of our reconstructed marriage. The painful truth that had nearly destroyed us had ultimately created the possibility for something more authentic to emerge, not despite the betrayal and its aftermath, but because of the honesty, accountability, and intentional rebuilding they had necessitated. As we loaded the car for the airport, I sent Melissa a quick text. "Heading to Tanzania with Ryan. Thank you again for everything. Love you." Her reply came seconds later. "Safe travels. So proud of you both. But remember, if he messes up again, I'm telling you at baggage claim next time, not waiting for the terminal." The message made me laugh out loud. Melissa's protective loyalty wrapped in humor, a reminder that while forgiveness and reconciliation had been possible, they had not erased the past or the vigilance it had taught us all. Ryan raised an eyebrow at my laughter, and I showed him the message, watching as he absorbed it with a rueful smile rather than defensiveness. "Fair enough," he acknowledged. "More than fair." As we drove toward the airport, the same O'Hare terminal where 6 months earlier a whispered truth had shattered my world, I felt neither the blissful ignorance of my previous departure nor the raw pain of unwanted knowledge, but something more valuable, the hard-won wisdom of someone who had faced betrayal, honored her own worth, and consciously chosen a path forward based not on idealized illusions, but on the complex, imperfect reality of human relationships. Whatever the future held, I would face it with eyes wide open, heart cautiously re-engaged, and the knowledge that I was strong enough to survive even the most painful truths whispered in my ear. What a powerful journey we've taken with Emma today, from that devastating moment at the airport to the hard-won healing 6 months later. Her story reminds us that betrayal doesn't have to be the end of a relationship, but healing requires honesty, commitment, and tremendous courage from both partners. Have you ever experienced a moment of truth that forever changed your perspective on a relationship? Or perhaps you've been in Ryan's position, working to rebuild trust after a serious mistake? Share your thoughts or experiences in the comments below.